This is an oral history interview conducted for the Witness to War Serving a Nation project at Nauset Regional High School in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. For the sake of this interview, please state your full name and community in which you now reside.
My name is Max Money, and I reside in Centerville, Massachusetts.
So, where did you grow up?
I grew up in California, in a little town called St. Helena, which is in the Napa Valley, just north of San Francisco, and lived on a ranch of about 12 acres where we had some prune trees and walnut trees and cherry trees and a little vineyard.
What was your favorite part about growing up there?
Pardon?
What was your favorite part about growing up there?
Favorite part about growing up? I think when I was small, the best part was to get out and climb up the trees and down the trees and get on the roofs of the chicken hatch and just running around, having a lot of energy doing it. We were very close to a river, Napa River, and so I'd run down there or swim down there. So that's the best part of it.
After high school, where did you go or what did you do?
Well, after high school, I went to college at Stanford University and was there for 4 years. And from there, I graduated into the Korean War.
Did you choose to join the military or were you drafted?
I joined. I did have to sign up for the draft at 18, I think it was. Everybody had to sign, males anyway, had to sign up for the draft at age 18. And I was in college at the time, so I got my draft deferred until I graduated. Then I was to go to be drafted. But there was a program that I was introduced to in which the Marine Corps was looking for officers. And if I chose to do that, I could, if I got through boot camp and didn't flunk out of boot camp, I would become a second lieutenant in the Marine Corps. So I chose to do that rather than to be just drafted, and I didn't know where I would end up or doing what.
So, walk us through your life in the military. What was training like? What did you do when you were first there? When you were stationed overseas?
Well, first of all, I had to go through boot camp and make it through boot camp, just like any other boot. And luckily, got through okay. And then I had to go to Quantico, Virginia, to learn how to be a Marine officer. So I was a private in boot camp, and then I got promoted to a second lieutenant. But I still had to go to school and learn the ways and means of becoming a leader of men. And after Quantico, I graduated and was sent to Marine Division, 2nd Division in North Carolina, a place called Camp Lejeune. And there I was platoon leader of a reconnaissance platoon.
What was that like there in North Carolina?
Well, it was all tactics, and in my situation, the reconnaissance, there was one reconnaissance company per division of troops, and we were sent. Our mission was to be sent out to scout out the enemy, find out where they were, what they were doing, and that kind of thing. So it was a lot of sneak and poop kind of thing.
So, how long after you joined the military were you stationed overseas?
I wasn't stationed overseas. I have a month of service overseas, but I was never in combat overseas.
So, what was it like there in Korea?
In Korea? Well, I never got to Korea since I was on the East Coast most of the time. Most of the time that I was there was, like I say, doing training my platoon in case we were called to go to Korea, which we were, by the way, but we were called back because the armistice had just come in, armistice talks that ended the war. So we never did get overseas, but we were ready to go.
Yeah.
And had our bags packed to go.
So, what was day-to-day life like in the military?
Well, I guess that depended upon what rank I was. When I was the private in boot camp, it was all listening to somebody giving orders, and I had to do follow the orders and make my own bed and that kind of thing. When I became an officer and a leader of a platoon in the reconnaissance company, then it was getting people trained to do their duty and what we were trained to do. So that included a lot of work on the water. I think I spent more time on Navy ships than I really did on the land, but that included a submarine and 2 light destroyers in which my platoon was sent out into rubber boats, and we had to learn to paddle and set mines and that kind of thing in water and scout out the enemy and one thing and another.
What was it like being on the Navy ships?
Well, nobody liked the submarine too much. They had room for a platoon of Marines, and that was all. And I think most of them were sick at the time we were on the seas. But we all got our what we were supposed to do done, and the cruises done, and practiced our what we were taught to do.
And going back to boot camp, what was that like?
Well, boot camp, it wasn't fun, but it was interesting. I think I learned the first thing about being a Marine officer in boot camp because I had a very good platoon sergeant in my platoon when I was a private. And he taught us some things that have still been with me all my life. I remember one instant we were out on a night reconnaissance, and we were supposed to learn how to not be recognized if suddenly a flare went off at night and we were marching or crawling through the bushes. We were supposed to just freeze, and not move so no one could see you. And every platoon in the boot camp had to do that, to go through that kind of exercise. But my platoon sergeant, when it came our turn to go through this thing, he says, "Don't worry about anything." He says, "You follow me." And what he did was to lead us off of this course where all the lights were. In other words, he cheated, and we went around all the lights and got to the other side. Nobody saw us anything, and they wondered where everybody was in the platoon. Well, the people talked to him about that and say, "Hey, you're supposed to teach these guys how to, be silent and be still when the lights go on." And he said, "No, I'm training them how to stay alive. And sometimes you have to break the rules to do that." So I thought that was pretty good. And here's a man that'd been in battle and knew what was going on and had been there. That's a lesson I've never forgotten. Sometimes you have to take a chance and go the wrong way or disobey an order if it's going to save lives.
So, along with that, did he ever share anything about his time in combat?
Not that I recall, but later on, I served with people who had been in combat and talked with quite a bit. And in fact, I had a officer that was with me in the reconnaissance platoon who had been to Korea. He was a Chinese. And if you know anything about the Korean War, the Chinese were part of the people we were fighting because they came in on the side of the North Koreans. And I learned a lot from that gentleman. He'd been a friend a long, long time. Received the Navy Cross, which is the second highest honor for what he did in Korea. And he's always been a close friend. He died several years ago, but I learned a lot from him.
What's your favorite memory from your time in the military?
Favorite memory? I think it was coming home. Coming home to that the war was over and I hadn't had to go into combat, but was kind of proud that I'd kind of grown up a little bit from the college senior that I was, and learned quite a bit about life and other people who were in combat and who became good friends, and one of whom I lost, a high school friend of mine.
Do you have any worst memories from your time in the military?
Any what?
Worst memories?
Worst memories? I think probably the worst memory I have was not from my Marine Corps experience, but because I did lose this good friend of mine from high school. I think that's the worst memory I had. I brought a picture of him and I can share it with you later, but that really hit me the most when he didn't come home. And I guess I felt a little bit selfish in a way because I hadn't gone overseas and been in combat too. But then I knew that that was just a pick of the draw of who went where at what time, and he didn't come back, didn't make it. So I still have memories of that, and that was a sorrowful time.
Are there any friendships that you made there that lasted a long time after your time?
Yes, there were a few. I mentioned the Chinese gentleman who was an officer has been a friend, and the young man I spoke of who was a high school buddy of mine. Of course, he was a friend before he went into the service. And there were several others in my platoon. My platoon sergeant was an interesting character. He was an American Indian. I think that's one reason he was in the reconnaissance company, because of his skills of getting somewhere where no one could hear him or see him or one thing or another. His problem was he drank too much, and all of us was getting into trouble. Got demoted, and they got made back up to sergeant, demoted again to private, but a wonderful Marine and a close friend. He several times after I got out of the active service, he came to my doorstep several times when he wasn't feeling too well, a little bit too much to drink, and so we took care of him for a while and sent him back getting well. So, but a deep friend, a good Marine, and I'm glad to have known him.
Do you have any regrets, or if you could go back in time, is there anything that you'd do differently?
I really can't think of anything. I was taught to follow orders, and that's what I got. You're ordered to go here to do this and that, and I thought that's probably the way it would go. Later on, when I became a company commander in the reserve, I stayed in the Marine Corps Reserve as an active member for 20 years, and so I forgot the question again.
Do you have any regrets, or if you could go back in time, would you do anything differently?
Oh, do anything differently? Yeah. I don't think so. I think I chose the path that I wanted to do, and I didn't want to be a career Marine, but I wanted to stay close to it, so that's why I stayed with the active reserve for over 20 years. And that gave me a chance to command a company at one time, and so I'm glad that it helped build me as a person, I think, and become a little bit wiser about people and what to do.
What was that like, staying with them for 20 years?
Well, my wife didn't like it too much because we had to go to summer camp all the time, you know, and be away from home. We got, I've had 2 standing orders that came that I could be called up for anything. One was when there was a missile crisis in Cuba. Maybe you've read about it recently, since Castro had died, that the United States was geared to go and invade Cuba if a missile went off. And so we had orders to be ready to go. So I had a duffel bag and everything all ready to go in case my company was called as a reserve company to go in this operation. And the other time that I was put on active duty notice was after 9/11, when the plane crashed, you know, in New York. I was given orders to report to Boston Navy Yard to become the commander there, Marine commander there, if we were called to duty. So those times were kind of rough, but luckily we never had to go.
How did it feel in instances like the Cuban missile and the 9/11 being like so close to having to go? Like, what did that feel like?
Well, there again, my wife didn't like that too much, but that was part of being active in the Corps in that sense. I was still in the reserves, but still ready to go. I could be called anytime, and so that's something that I faced might happen. Luckily, it never did happen, but the bad thing about it is that things happen outside that aren't good and cause you to have to go back and put on the uniform.
After your time in the military, where did you go?
After the military, I went back to school, went back to Stanford, and got a teaching certificate and a master's degree in education, and became a school teacher. My wife was also a teacher. I don't know, I think she kind of talked me into it, thought that I might be good at that. And so I was a school teacher and administrator for, well, almost 30 years, I guess.
Where do you teach?
Well, I taught in California to begin with, in the Napa school system. It's in the Napa Valley. And then I came to Vermont, where my wife was from, and she wanted to get back to her family, so we moved east when a job opened to be a sort of a roving instructor in Vermont, where the rural schools were being given, they wanted to expand their curriculum and make their schools better. And my job was to help with that, to give teachers classes, to demonstrate teaching in the schools and that kind of thing. So I did that for 4 years. That was a federal program, and then the program stopped. After that, I was looking around for a job, and a job opened here on the Cape, so I came to the Cape and taught here at Bontsville High School and Falmouth High School and Cape Tech. And then I retired.
What subjects did you teach? Or
A little bit of everything. Basically, I taught social studies. and did some coaching of sports. The let's see what I'm going to say here. Can't remember what I was going to say. Something else in my mind will come to me, but
So, what led you to move to Cape Cod?
what?
What led you to move to Cape Cod?
Well, the job that opened up, first teaching job here, actually the first job that opened up to me was the principal at the high school in Barnstable. And I only lasted a semester. It was kind of a tough time between me and some of the staff that didn't like the fact that I had come in from way off the planet somewhere and thought caused some disruption. So I decided no, I didn't like that. I didn't want to stay and make it bad for everybody. So I left the principalship and went taught it in Falmouth. That's what I was going to say. The Falmouth, when I went to Falmouth, I taught a group of students who were, I guess just to better phrase it, didn't like to be in school or had troubles that they didn't last long in a classroom, and were rowdy, or for whatever reason. For a while I had a young man that had just killed his father and was awaiting justice, and so it was a group of students who had trouble, and was with that program for quite a while, and that kind of brought me back to the Marine Corps again, of how best to teach these young people who really didn't want to be in school, but yet wanted to be a person, wanted something to tell them they were good, even though they did maybe bad things. And I think we got along pretty well. I don't think we just lost one or two out of that group over the years, and I think that was the best teaching experience that I had. Kind of taught me to be a father, I think.
So, along with that, what was your favorite part about teaching?
I think just meeting young people and getting along with them and learning about them as what they want to do, just like you. You know, what makes you tick, and what makes you want to go and do this or that. And I think the fact that I was the kind of person that opened up to people, every new class I got while I taught, I met with every student once a semester. You know, we'd get together in the classroom when other people had their heads in the books maybe, and we had conversations together, just a personal conversation about how they were getting along, one thing and another. So I think that helped quite a bit.
What's your favorite thing about living on Cape Cod?
Well, I like Cape Cod because being from California and where I grew up, we were close to the Pacific Ocean and San Francisco Bay Area, so the oceans were in my heart too, I guess. And my wife liked Cape Cod also for getting away from the Vermont mountains where she was from. But I guess it was just the atmosphere itself and the nature that was here. Of course, we don't have any mountains, but we have the oceans, and it's kind of nice to have. I don't know, someone once said it's nice to be by the tides of the sea. You have two high tides and you have two low tides, and it's the same every day, whether it's rain, sun, or whatever. I always thought that was a good way of putting it.
Do you still see anybody from your time in the military?
Yes, I have friends in San Francisco that I went to school with. In fact, I was just out to San Francisco this last August to a Korean War memorial service that they had in San Francisco, and saw many of the people that I had been connected with in the war. Yeah.
What was that like, seeing them again? Like, did it bring back memories?
Yeah, it did, in a way. It meant that San Francisco had been the port of debarkation for all the men going to Korea. And so it was kind of a homecoming, in a sense, from my own sense, that I'd come back to the same spot where some of my buddies went, and the one man didn't come back at all.
So what still stays with you from your time in the military? Like,
What
stays with you? Like, is there anything important that you learned that?
Yeah, I think you learn that there are times you follow orders, and there are times that maybe you shouldn't, because there's a higher good by disobeying that order. And that's something that each individual has to do in his own mind or her own mind sometimes in life. Is this the right way, or isn't it? Is this the right road to go down or not? Should I really do this or not? And I think we all learn to do that in our own ways. So I think that stuck with me.
If anybody came to you asking about joining the military, what advice would you give them?
I think I would advise them to really think about it, because you have to dedicate yourself to something where you might be called to take another life. And think about that a while. I think anybody, a military or a police officer or anybody in that situation, I think has to think about that. Also, they have to think about, would I be willing to give up my life too? So I think I would have them just sit down with themselves and talk to themselves about what they think really they could do or want to do in that case.
So, do you think that teaching was the right thing to go to after the military? Did you like teaching a lot?
Yes, I do. I think that it fulfilled something for my my being. So, in that sense, I was building or hoping to build young people to grow up to be able to think for themselves, do for themselves, and do the right thing.
That's pretty cool, having had an impact like that on so many lives as being a teacher.
Well, I hope so. I have kept in touch with former students over the years, and that's one thing that kind of makes my heart beat, to know that people still remember Mr. Money. Yeah, and so that was very very pleased with that.
What was it like, going back to the time in the military, what was it like coming home after?
Well, I tell you, it's interesting, because when I came home, I thought that I was going to go back. I told you I was going to go back to school, which I did. But I didn't realize that I would meet a young lady who later became my wife. And I think that's kind of changed me a whole lot, because I did, and she was a school teacher too, and in San Francisco for the summer before I went back to school. And somehow we just clicked right off, and the next summer we were married.
So when you went back to school, was it odd did it feel different being back in school after being in the military?
Yes, it did. It changed me, I think, from a boy to a man. I mean, I felt like it in that sense. I think the military made me grow up. even in school at 18, 19 years of age, you still think you're a kid that can do almost anything, you know, and sometimes you get yourself in trouble and whatever it is. But I think I learned that there's a lot more to life than just having a good time or being a good sports figure or whatever. There's more to it than that. There's love to give, there's life to give, and so I think I learned that.
Okay, I think we're all good with the